And we are officially live. Welcome back to another episode of the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. Today's guest, Amy Hartmann, is a podcasting pro who helps businesses turn stories into serious growth, revenue, and deep audience connection. We're diving into the Gilmore Girls Effect, why a bingeable limited series podcast could be the game changer your business needs. Today, we're going to be discussing how to create a binge-worthy show, turning listeners into loyal fans and paying clients, and why, what really makes a podcast convert. So we're going to be bringing it to you, as always, real, raw, and unplugged. So stay tuned. You won't want to miss this one. We'll see you on the inside.
Tomorrow is Valentine's Day, Robert. Are you ready?
I'm always ready. Every day's Valentine's Day around this household. Are you kidding me?
I'm going to ask Kelly.
That's right.
Well, Tina, you get flowers every week also, so that's.
I was telling him yesterday because he was like, I'm gonna be a little bit late, so don't look at my location because we have locations. I was like, okay. So he came back and I was like, where's my roses? And he was just like, I get you flowers every single week. But he does very good every single Valentine's Day. So I'm very blessed.
I tell you, I think the secret sauce is really just, this is for me speaking to men that are watching the show, knowing your lady, right? Because not one solution fits all. I know Kelly could care less about flowers. Every time I've ever purchased them for her,
she's like, you're wasting money. I know a few people who are like that.
Right. She'd rather be planning that next vacation or that trip that we go on. And I'm good with that. Right. So, but you have to know, your ladies for sure.
Your ladies' love language.
That's it. Absolutely.
So your ladies' love language is probably, Kelly's is probably quality time.
It's a little bit of that as well, because she obviously operates at a very
travel. That's that travel piece of it. Mine is gifts and quality time.
Yeah.
So which is why I love diamonds and flowers and all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of love language and all the things that we've got going on, awesome. We have a wonderful guest with us today, Amy Hartmann. Thank you, Amy, for jumping on with us. I'm just still getting to learn a little bit more about you. So this is going to be an excellent opportunity, not only for our guests that are live and those that are coming on later, but even for myself, right? I've been trying to learn a little bit more about the things that you're doing. And I absolutely, and what I've already seen, you are going to be a huge asset for our show going forward. So appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kick it off. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? And of course, I'm going to ask that question. So if you want to throw it out there at any point in time, what is the Gilmore Girls Effect?
First of all, for those of you who know what Gilmore Girls are, you guys are probably on a repeat binge-worthy show. I posted this a couple of weeks ago that the Gilmore Girls were like my safe show, my comfort show. Okay. Like it's a 7-season show that I literally just started watching, like maybe in 2018 or 2019. This show was on in 2003. I had kids, so I couldn't watch it at that time. But it's such a comfort feeling show. Literally, I had probably 50 to 75 comments saying that is on constant repeat. So once they get done with the 7 seasons, they go back to the first season and just constantly binge it. And so when I met Amy, she was telling me that she has this Gilmore Girl Effect
immediate connection.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And we immediately connected.
I love it.
We met at Over Fear, and we have some projects coming up together. And I was like, this is it. We got to call the show the Gilmore Girl Effect.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So So Amy, take it from here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and some of the things that you're, specializing in.
Thank you. Yeah. So I am a podcast producer, and that's my website that just popped up there, SoTrueDigital.com. And we actually work with businesses that want to have a podcast to generate leads and sales from their podcast. So a lot of times when people hear podcasts, they're thinking, Joe Rogan and all of that kind of thing. And that's great. However, a business can truly benefit from having a podcast, and it can be the cornerstone of their entire marketing, making their marketing easier. And that's really where we fit in. And so all of our podcasters are generating leads and generating income at every single episode that they produce. So that's really our sweet spot and where we like to work. And we prefer to work with people who have, I always say, like a meaningful message. So like coaches and people who are really putting good things into the world and trying to make changes in the world and with other people and have an impact on other people. And I think that's really a really special place to be in the podcasting world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's definitely a need for it. It's interesting. And maybe you'll be covering a few things regarding this, but I know that podcasting as just kind of a broad term, it became very trendy, right? For a while, and everyone in the world wants to have a podcast. But the interesting thing is that so many start and, very few even get past the 10th episode, let alone break through that 1 year milestone. Do you want to talk a little bit about that or things that you've experienced?
Yeah, so I've been telling everyone podcasting is the go-to marketing move in 2025. It is growing exponentially. We are seeing it growing by the millions in terms of audience. And I think there's a lot there. I think people have ad fatigue. People have social media fatigue. People are distrusting of social media. It feels like, fake news all the time, or it's all curated on Instagram or whatever it is. And so right now, this is the perfect time for that, because on the other hand, with podcasting, people feel more connected. In fact, there was a study that came out recently that said something like 60% of the people say that they have a deeper connection with the host when they listen to a podcast. So the business owner, whoever that is, whenever they're listening to that podcast, they generate this like really deep connection. And so right now in this day and time, it is the place to go. And like you said, a lot of people kind of got on this bandwagon years ago. And so the thought is, well, there's millions of podcasts. Maybe it's a saturated industry. Maybe I arrived late. And the reality is, because of the other thing you said, which is most podcasts don't even make it to the 10th episode. Right. And part of that is a misunderstanding of what the numbers mean. So I'd love to talk about that in just a minute. But I think that we think it's saturated, but honestly, even though there's millions of podcasts out there, there's probably only 350,000 that exist in the entire world that have more than 10 episodes. So that's not a lot considering, all the businesses and topics and everything out there. And so I think it's not a saturated place, and it is the go-to marketing tool right now.
Yeah.
For 2025.
So Amy, you also mentioned having a limited series, and we know that that's bingeable. Is there a difference between a limited series versus a regular podcast? Do you recommend that your clients have both? Can you share a little bit of insight on that?
Yeah. So the reason that I created this Gilmore Girls Effect and it's related to a bingeable series is because when I say podcasting is the go-to move for your marketing, some people go, oh, that's an every week thing. I have to be so consistent. I have to find the guests. What if I want to go on vacation? And suddenly it feels like a lot of overwhelm. It's just so overwhelming. The best thing in the world for your marketing is to have an ongoing podcast. I'm not going to lie about that. You will convert people at higher rates than you do on social media. In fact, people are 14% more likely to take an action and to do whatever your call to action is when they hear you on a podcast. And so a regular podcast just gives you a chance to connect with people. But if that feels overwhelming, if that feels like too much to take on, then the next best thing is to have a series, a limited series. If you think of it like Netflix or Hulu, they have these 6, 8, 10 episodes, right? All related to one storyline, and it kind of begins and ends. And so
and they drop it all at one time.
yeah, you can watch the whole thing, right? You're binging it all at one time. And it's all related to sort of one topic, one main thing you're trying to do, one main goal for your business.
Yeah.
And so it becomes an evergreen tool, an evergreen asset that can be used inside your funnels. So you can have both in your business, of course. And if you're just getting into podcasting, you're new to it, then the Bingeable series, limited series podcast is definitely the go-to move for you. If you're getting into it and ongoing podcasting feels overwhelming.
Amy, what would be the best number? Like if you're going to do a binge-worthy podcast series, what would be that magic number that you want them to drop?
The magic number doesn't exist. We're going to do something between 6 and 12 episodes, with 12 being your maximum. Okay. 6 to 12. And what I recommend is that we sit down and we map it out. I have a download actually on my website that you can grab. It's totally free and it's got the same name, the Gilmore Girls Effect at the front. And in there, it kind of has a little breakdown of like the different areas that you go. But basically, you're introducing your topic, you're diving deep into your topic, you are teaching something through your topic, and then you're calling to action to what you want to sell. And so how long does it take to tell that story? Podcasting is storytelling, right? So we're not just preaching at people. We decide the story we want to tell, and how long does it take to tell the story? And that's how many episodes you should have.
Very, very, very interesting. And by the way, for those that are just listening and they don't see the website on the screen, it's www.SoTrueDigital.com to be able to access the download that Amy speaks of. And so, it is so true what you're saying. So true, right? So true digital. It's so true what you're saying in regards to the fact that it is about the story. It's about the hook and the thing that actually pulls, the viewers in. I know that I have listened to podcasts series and each episode is over an hour and I'm drawn in, right? I'm waiting for the next one because it really is some great content and it draws you in. I've also, though, listened to some amazing pieces that are only 10 minutes and 15 minutes long because they're impactful. They get right to the point. They tell you exactly how to make a big change or a shift. And so I enjoy kind of both. And so would you say that it's okay for somebody that's getting into it to mix that up a little bit or to stick traditionally with one model?
I think it's okay to mix things up. I mean, lots of podcasts have different days for different things or different types of content. Sometimes it's a solo, sometimes it's an interview. So I think it's totally fine to mix it up. But to your point about longer podcasts, the studies show that the longer the podcast, actually, the more retention that you have. It's a very interesting thing because in order for you to tell a story for that long, make it interesting, we're really diving deep, right? It's not surface level. And people like that deep dive. And so hour-long podcasts are actually the ones that have the longest retention of length of people staying on. And more people like that longer format. So it's interesting. A lot of our business podcasts are between 30 and 45 minutes. And that's kind of that sort of sweet spot for a business podcast. But if you've got a really storytelling, you're diving deep with your guests, an hour or more is really appropriate.
Interesting.
So when I listen to podcasts, I listen to it while we're walking or while we're working out. And you're walking or working out between 30 minutes to an hour. Well, I do. I'm not in the gym like 2 hours a day, but so usually about an hour, and I'm able to go through and listen to, Ed Milet or, Amy Porterfield, or one of my favorite podcasters that I listen to, and they're about an hour long. So it's perfect for when I go working out and I'm just listening to it.
I think the key again, and you've mentioned it a few times, is really good content, a really good storytelling, format. Because again, if there's no substance, then an hour is way too much, right? The other thing that's interesting is because for years I admit, I have jumped in and out of different podcasting formats. I've tried different things, and should you have a guest? Shouldn't you have a guest? And I've really just found that as organic as you can be, at least currently, I'm finding it is very important, and that's why that mix I feel is important. Sometimes you can jump on with a huge piece of content, right? You've got a guest, you've got an hour-long program, and then other times maybe it's just something that's very thought-provoking or something that pertains to like today's movement, or today's shift, and so you can just blast it out there for 10 or 15 minutes to provide that content. The other thing I'd like to just throw out there at you is what are you seeing in regards to the mix of live versus pre-recorded? I think I know where you're gonna go with this, but that's one thing that we've been talking a great deal about as well, is that mix between live versus batch recordings.
Well, I mean, I truly believe in pre-recording podcasts. I think that podcasts need to always drop on the same day, the same place, at the same time. And in order to get the really best guests and the really best content, sometimes that doesn't happen on the minute that you need to be live, right? Sometimes it happens in other places. And also another really important piece is something that Tina brought up earlier, which is that we're putting our earbuds in and we're we're going to clean the house or going to the gym or doing whatever.
Multitasking while you're listening to a podcast.
Yeah, your earbud is inside of,
Yes.
I mean, it's inside their body. It's inside their ear. That's like, you can't get any closer to a human being than right inside their ear.
Yeah, you're whispering.
It is a very close connection. And so you want to make sure that it feels authentic, that it feels real and raw and vulnerable, but also we want to make sure that it's edited for the things that we see make people jump off, like a lot of filler words and repetition or talking over each other, those kinds of things. And so there's a really nice balance in the editing that would allow for that. And that's really important to me, is that we do everything pre-recorded and not live. So that might be the opposite of what we're doing here, but
yeah. No, but this is what I mean. This is the value, right? This is the value for the audience, for the things that we're doing, some of the growing pains, and I still love this concept. We've been talking about it a great deal. I love this concept that from time to time having these special episodes where you go live and you've really advertised it, where you build up the audience so that they're engaging and asking these questions live. And so that's, I think there's so much power in that. However, you're right. If you're wanting to put out the content, it's so often that our schedules, they don't align as well, right? And so,
especially when you bring in 3 co-hosts together at once.
Right. So it's nice to be able to, like you said, to be able to do some batch recordings and things around that. The other beautiful thing is too, it allows you to stay on point with creating a series, or when you talk about something that's binge worthy. Maybe this topic of today's podcast, it can run 3 or 4 episodes deep, right? Where it's just that continuation. So I love that. And, so it's a learning process. What are some other things that you would say are
like for the podcast host? Like, what would be the beneficial things for the podcast host to be able to batch record and edit? Because I know when I was asking you, about Uncensored Entrepreneurs, you told me a huge benefit, and I was like, I didn't even think about that.
And I don't remember what I said.
So the benefit you told me was that we can add in sponsors and those commercials at that specific break. Because you said that a lot of people, tend to break off at a certain time. And you, as a podcast producer, watch those times and say, okay, well, usually about 32 minutes in, your people are dropping off. So that means as a podcast host, about 20 minutes in, you can cut to commercial break, give your CTA, which is going to bring those leads in.
Yes, exactly. I mean, so the mid-roll ads, that's what we call as a mid-roll, is when we put an ad right in the middle of the podcast. The mid-roll ads should always be specifically and strategically placed in your episode. I really don't like the tools, a lot of those podcast platform tools. We won't mention any of them by name, but you know what I'm talking about. They allow you to put dynamic ads in, and it just puts it wherever it wants to. It just cuts the episode in any place. And whether you like that ad or that sponsor or not, it doesn't matter. It's just like, that's who gets put in there. And, sometimes that can end up being in an appropriate moment, a moment of vulnerability. We're like right in the middle of a thought process, anything, and it just like cuts to that. So I really do think that being able to place those where you want them is important. I think that being able to see the length of how long people are staying on, and of course we want to grow the length of time they stay on, but we always want to strategically place those where the majority of people are listening. And that mid-roll ad is the one that has the highest conversion rate for you. And this, again, I keep going back to the studies. There's been some reports that just came out because we're at the beginning of the year. And so I love to look at those reports over like the trends. And one of the big important things is that about 56% of people who listen to a podcast have taken action or purchased from the brands that they're listening to or from the brands that are recommended by the host. So if you have a sponsor, you want to be able to put them there, right? And that really sweet spot. And if you're charging for sponsorships, you're going to be able to charge more.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that you're right. There is a connection. When I am completely engaged in any type of podcast, I love podcasting, have for years. So I listen to many of them. And so when I'm listening to one that I really like, and there's an advertisement for like a course or their book, right? Even something just very simple like that. I'm typically one of the first people. I'm just like, okay, I make the purchase because I'm already engaged. I feel like this is great content, that this other product or service just has to be, good as well. Yeah. So I love that. Are there any other things, any other key elements that you would say make a podcast truly engaging, just like conversation driven, that you're seeing in the metrics?
Yeah. So whenever you have guests, this is the most important thing that everybody misses the mark on is, well, first of all, you just go out and go, who can be a guest on my podcast? I see that all the time in groups. Who can be a guest? And I really believe that podcasts should be purposeful. They should have a story that you're telling, and then you back into the guest. So this is the story I want to tell. Let me find the guests that are going to help me tell that story, and the guests that have an audience that is similar to mine. There's a process there in figuring out who it is that you want to have on that's going to be beneficial to you and beneficial to them as well. And so audiences that are aligned with each other, they have an audience that's similar to yours and vice versa. This is a bigger benefit. And then within that conversation, if you have a conversation with your guest and all you do is ask the questions, you have come across as a reporter who has not made yourself a part of the story. And instead, you want to be a part of that story. You want your expertise to shine as well, because the audience of the guest, when they send that episode to their audience already knows them. They joined their list because they wanted to be on that person's list. Why do they care about you if all you did was ask a question, right? They need to hear from you. They need to hear your expertise. And so be a part of the conversation in order to help grow your audience through this combined mutual benefit of the guest has an audience and you have an audience and we're sharing, right? Yeah. And so that's my biggest piece of advice all the time. Whenever I do coaching with my clients on, media coaching and how to show up and interview coaching and all of that, my first piece of advice is you have to lend your own thoughts to the conversation. So ask the question, they answer, come back with a follow-up that affirms what they're saying or debates what they're saying. Just bring your voice to the conversation in some way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, with intention, right? Like, have a purpose, have intention in what you're doing, and not just slapping something up there. I do see that quite often, and typically those are the podcasts that will fizzle out before the milestone year mark or even 6-month mark. Is there? It feels like work. So you're rushing to just throw something up there. We've even done it before, right? And so when you think history wise, to not make those mistakes and to repeat those things, have true intention. Like, what kind of value are people going to bring from this? You're 100% spot on. Which, by the way, Tina, Starr, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that, but I'm really curious, to talk further also about just SoTrue Digital. Like, what really brought you into that transitionally?
Yeah, I used to have a marketing agency that was a full service marketing. So we did social media, we did all kinds of things. And one of the big places that we were able to really move the needle for people was through their podcasts. And so we launched a whole bunch of podcasts with our clients. At one point, every one of our marketing clients had a podcast, and we were using it as, again, like the cornerstone for that. And as social media started to shift, and as we started to see this distrust and people were not buying as much and ads were becoming more and more expensive, I really started leaning into this podcasting piece as our primary driver of the marketing and of the business growth for my clients. And so then a couple of years ago, we decided to stop doing the rest of the marketing and focus on the thing that we really felt was helping people to grow exponentially, which was podcasting. And so we converted into a podcasting agency because it's where we can help the most, create the biggest impact, and help people to grow an audience and put more money into their business through their podcast.
I love that. I love that. I mean, I can already see that not only will people that are listening, any viewers or any that come back and listen to the recordings later will benefit from your services, but I know we will, right? Like, we have this show collaboratively. We also have some of our own independent podcasts as well. And so I think it is one of the best ways to get your voice out there. Yeah. I will say though, and even some of my own coaching work, right? That's a challenge in itself. Some people have great content. They have information that needs to be, served right to others, but they're afraid of getting on camera. They're afraid of being out there. Just all of those things. Would you have anything to like lend to that? Are you finding that some people are fearful of these actions that are they're taking to have their own podcast?
Yes, and this is such an important conversation around this idea of fear, and people who come to me and go, "I'm afraid to be on camera. I'm afraid of whatever." Well, podcasts are audio if you're looking at the purest sense of what podcast is. Mm-hmm. So put it on audio. And if you're worried that, well, video is growing, how am I going to not have video? The top 200 episodes on Apple across any genre, across any podcast, the top 200 episodes that are listened to right now on Apple Podcasts do not have a single video content associated with them. At all.
Smart. And I've seen a trend in that space as well. And many times, even if there is video, it typically is just a short reel that really draws people in and leads them to the podcast.
Exactly. So if you're worried about being on camera, put a podcast out that's audio only. The top 200 episodes on Apple don't have video either, so don't worry about it. And then, yes, you can use clips. If you do record the video, but you're not producing that, you can take the clips that you like the best, the places where you or the guest said something incredible, and use those reels to push people back to listen to the whole podcast. But if being on camera bothers you, then don't be on camera. Let's just put it out there and let's make a difference in your business.
That's great advice to get people going. So, Amy, you talk about this being the secret sauce for business owners, and our listeners are entrepreneurs. And you did actually touch a little bit on this when you talked about the break that you put your commercial in or whatever you're advertising, right? But we want to make the episodes very bingeable. So we're doing a bunch of storytelling, but how do we keep that balance when we're trying to also get leads and customers from these podcast episodes?
Great question. And that's really why I say that a bingeable series is your secret sauce, because if you are out there doing all of these other things and you don't have time for that continuous podcast every week, then you can put together this series. And the thing about the series is it's one time, you do it one time, you put together those 6 episodes, and it becomes evergreen for you throughout your business. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go back into your business, to your message, to the thing that you need to convey to your audience. What do they need to know to buy from you? What do they need to know before they're going to be ready to be in there? How are they going to connect? What are your biggest tips? What are your do's and your don'ts that you need them to know, right? And so plan out those stories exactly how you want them to be. And the beautiful thing about a series is it is very planned. You're going to sit down and plan it out. You're going to plan if you're going to have guests on there or not. And then it becomes a part of your funnel. So your marketing can send people to that. And I usually say put it mid funnel. So because it's going to be more work for someone to consume the entire thing, we don't want it to be the top of funnel because we might lose them at that point. So we want there to be a download of some kind, gets them on your list so that you're able to start nurturing them. And then you want to send them in to this bingeable series that is planned out, but beautifully storytelling, all about what they need to know in your business to work with you. And then at that point, they are more invested in you and ready to consume that longer piece of content. And, you want to build in those calls to action in every single episode as well, so that they know how to take the next step with you, because they're mid funnel and they're ready to convert. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing that trending quite often, especially when people are trying to, run a platform with subscribers. And so they'll put that, like you said, mid funnel. That series is just like an aha moment where you're just drawn in, you're listening, and then
like I need to listen to this whole thing.
Right. Then there's a conversion, right, to subscribe for more.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's like your billboard, your advertisement. Laura, I didn't want to overlook this when I first saw this pop up. So, we talked about it a little bit, but yeah, what are your thoughts around leveraging, multiple platforms? I think, from my perspective, it allows you to test market different things as well, right? You could see how YouTube is performing versus your just your straight audio podcast on Apple and Spotify.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Spotify is getting more and more into the world of video, so it's kind of great to have some video there. Apple has had the ability to have video since the very beginning. A lot of the platforms are only audio. We're still seeing the majority of people are listening to the audio on Spotify, Apple, every other podcast platform. And then YouTube is where they're going if you have video content. If you don't have video content, you can always upload, some kind of a static video or something like that if you want to. Not as many people are going to watch that on YouTube, but if you're concerned about being on all the platforms. But one of the bigger ways that you could use YouTube if you're not producing the entire video is to use those reels or shorts on YouTube to push people into the podcast channels. But it doesn't matter which way you go in terms of if you upload the video to Spotify, that's totally fine. People will still just listen if they want.
Would you say, would you like to highlight a little bit more around consistency, right? It's more about, everyone's always thinking about, I need this and I want to talk about this and I want to share this. But then they do it once and then they do it again 3 weeks later and they do it again next month. And I think the consistency is more than anything, right? Just to get it out there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think consistency matters a lot. I think that if you put an episode out there today and then you don't show up for 3 or 4 weeks and then you don't show up for 6 weeks and, people don't know where to find you or how to find you, and they're really looking for that consistency, but so are the platforms. So when you go upload your podcast to the platform, so Spotify, Apple, whatever, you tell them how often you're going to publish an episode. And if you say I'm publishing every week, then you better publish every week. Otherwise, they don't believe you and they don't organically share your podcast to people who are searching for similar terms because they don't know what you're doing. And so be consistent both for your audience, but also for the platform so that it can all work for you. And I mean, if your favorite show came on and then they didn't tell you when it was coming again, and they didn't tell you what day it was, and they didn't tell, would you keep watching that show?
Yeah, no. However, I will say, unless it was a really, really, really good show, right? That's truly branded. But you're right. It's it is something, and you do lose. I could even think of it with like some popular TV shows, series that did not replay the next season for 2 or 3 years. I think we all know them. We don't need to name them, but they lost viewership because some people were just hanging on for 2 or 3 years, but others were like, are you kidding me? I'm already like past that. I'm on to other things. I'm thinking of other, maybe I've even matured. And so I think about it in relationship to business. Yeah. If I have to wait too long, I'm going to be past that stage. I'm not going to come back around to you if I'm already, 5 miles down the road. So
I already forgot the first episode anyway, or the first season. Watch it all over again.
Exactly. Got to go back and rewatch. Amy, one of the things that I love about hosting podcasts is that when you're marketing in the future, You can say, I talked about this in one of my episodes. Comment, episode 136 below, and you'll get the link. And it brings them into your podcast world because they're like, oh my gosh, you talked more about this. I want to go listen. And then especially if it's in that middle of a series, they're really going to get into us. Tell us a little bit more about how people can use it for marketing after you drop that podcast.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's every episode of any podcast, whether it's a series, whether it's seasonal, whether it's an ongoing year-round podcast. I mean, every episode is evergreen, every single one of them, unless you happen to do a Christmas episode on Christmas or something, but the majority of them are going to be evergreen content for you. And so another mistake I see people making in their marketing is that on the week that the episode drops, they 7 days bombard people with listen to my episode. And then the next week they move on to, the next episode. And really what a good marketing mix looks like is next week we're going to be talking about this, right? We got one post about that. We've got 2 posts or 3 about the current episode. Look at this episode that just dropped. And then we're pulling from episodes from the past at any point in the past and mixing that in. Different topics resonate with different people, and you want them. So our downloads amass no matter how many episodes or when the episode is that they listened to. So if I go and listen to that episode and I thought, man, that was really good, I'm not necessarily going chronologically. I might scroll back and look at another episode that the topic is interesting to me. And that's how we bring people in. So the evergreen aspect of it, or being able to say, and especially if you're doing a series, the reason I like series if you're just starting out is you can say, oh, I covered that in my series, go listen to it. And you can send them to the whole series. And it's kind of like being a public speaker. Like it has that kind of effect. I posted that on my socials yesterday, is that it's that kind of effect with people. They're your audience and you're the speaker, right? So it has that. It's kind of like giving a signature talk, and you can send people to your signature talk, to your expertise at any point that you want to. So, and if you go to a networking event, if you're talking to someone one-on-one, if somebody comes into your DMs and says, can I pick your brain on this topic? Which they, how they do.
How about instead of picking my brain, how about you go listen to episode 136?
There you go.
Right. Especially when there's a niche or an avatar target market, right? Many times when you're onboarding someone, or even like the initial group coaching stage, when you're saying, like, this is the topic we're going to talk about. This is where you need to be. These are the things that you need to delve into. And so, lining them up with, like you said, episodes 3, episodes 17, and episodes 30 that really speak to that topic that they're trying to, create some success in. And I love doing that. In fact, I've said this many times to my co-hosts that I have taken many podcasts that I've been on, and also ones that I've been a host of, and used them in some of my evergreen courses as my initial piece of content, right? With some type of call to action or a workbook or something that accommodates that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it also can work in your marketing. If you have a download, you have a PDF, how many people do PDF downloads? Well, if you could take that PDF download and also plug in, here's where you can go for additional information, and you're sending them to your series, you're sending them to an episode, right? So you can plug those things in that you've already created to let people get more information and dig deeper when they're already on your list. They've already been nurtured, right? We're getting opportunities to connect with them on a deeper level that way.
And you're just building value on top of value. And if you can create an additional CTA, go listen to my podcast instead of go grab my, freebie here. Because every podcast in the notes is going to have some kind of CTA as well.
Yeah. And I believe by even doing that, I find that it's funny as this is, that you even inspire yourself once again when you go back to certain things. And I have pulled old content that I've shared or given to clients or prospects that even, I'm going like, wow.
Damn, I was good.
That was really deep. Like I haven't talked on that subject in 3 years, but it was.
I need to start talking about that again. I was really good there.
Right. So it really does, right? I think it's great to kind of revisit and to, to organize that content. That's another thing that I see just in general. And I would imagine that your coaching style when it comes to podcasting is about organizing as well, because
Yes.
so often people just have content all over the place. They put posts out daily. They have quotes that they've maybe given, things that are excerpts from their books, but it's really unorganized, right? They can't draw from that. And so I do like the idea of categorizing things based on subject and impact.
Mm-hmm.
And for
Absolutely.
someone who's never had a podcast before, one of the things I often hear is the technology piece. I don't have the technology. I don't have a mic. I don't know how to get started. And it really holds them back. And then they never launch their podcast. What advice do you have for them?
Don't worry about any of those things. Obviously, if you have a microphone, if you have headphones, those kinds of things are helpful. They make it so that there's not a lot of editing on the back end, so that your sound can be better, crisper. But if you don't have it, don't let it hold you back. You can get in a Zoom room and record. You can go to Audacity as a free tool that records audio. You can record it there. You can do it on StreamYard. It doesn't matter where you record, online studio, whatever it is, use a free one and just start putting it together. Don't hold yourself back. The world needs to hear what you have to say. The world is ready for your content, so give it to them. And as that audience grows, you can then start to invest in that. There's tons of podcasts that if you listen to their first episode, it was terrible. Yeah. But now that they're on episode 50 or 100 or whatever it is, they've kind of figured it out. And even with the podcast that we produce, once we get past episode 10, we start digging back in and looking at what's going on with the audience. How are they growing? How long are they staying? Do we need to restructure this? How do we want to, is this intro the right intro, right? Are we doing the right thing in the outro? Are people even staying on to hear my call to action? Those kinds of things. And after episode 10 is when we start also looking at, do we want to have your own mid-roll in there, right? Do we want to start advertising you, or do we want to have a name announcement at the front? We don't do any of that until we have some episodes under our belt to see what your audience even does and how they respond. And then you start making the tweaks anyway. So let all of it go and let the numbers go too. This idea that you have to have 10,000 downloads, let it go. Because if you had 100 people hanging on every word that you said and listening to what your expertise was, and then 54% of them took some kind of action, that's 54 new people in your world.
So true. It goes back to that old rule of thumb, take imperfect action, right?
It's better than none.
It's better than none. And so, most people they're just, most of us, right? We're paralyzed by fear, trying to make everything perfect. We talk about that often. I know that, Starr, Tina, and myself, we tend to be perfectionists. And so, I remember my very first course, I took so long to actually launch it that, again, the content wasn't even, valid any longer. Right. So I have to ask this question, and it's really probably more of a selfish reason as well. But I think that the answer and just this topic as a whole will help other people that are listening. If you already have a podcast, if you already have content, if you already have some things out there, whether it's audio or video, and you're wanting to, because I'm a branding person, kind of rebrand, reshift, do some things, do you recommend to kill the whole program and start over fresh, or just basically there's a bookmark right here and you just rebrand and keep moving forward?
Yep. You just rebrand and move forward. And the thing is when you go onto the platforms and you change out that cover art, that thumbnail, it's actually going to change it all the way back to the beginning. So it'll do it for you. Yes. And there may be changes that you make to the format, to the intros, to the outros. Let them be, but don't lose the data that you already have. Don't lose the downloads. Don't lose the ratings and the comments that hopefully you already have on that podcast. And you can rebrand at any time. You can change your intro. You can change your description. You can change at any time, but unless you are completely changing your topic. Like if you were talking about dogs and now you're talking about business,
Yeah.
maybe that's a good, like, that's not a place where you want to just keep going. But if it's like, I was talking about this aspect of business and now I want to talk about this aspect of business, let it be, right?
Yeah. And plus, I just believe that, when people start searching your content, it is very interesting when, even for ourselves, when you dig up the old archives, when you see the old videos, even if it is an entirely new brand or even a little bit of a different topic, sometimes there's a little bit of an overlap. But okay, good. I was hoping that you were going to say that because I've done this a couple times. I've recommended it for clients as well. And I wanted to make sure that just made sense. I mean, even for the uncensored entrepreneurs, right? We're in there's a new stage of evolution. We're looking at what does it take now? We're at a milestone. We've done some things. We have content out there. We have people that come up to us, weeks later and say, I look forward to your show. And by the way, that kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier about pre-recorded content on their time, not our time, because so often people will tell me about an episode that they watch on LinkedIn or somewhere else, weeks later. So, I love that. So, I truly appreciate you being on the show. I think that you're not only in the perfect place at the perfect time for others, people within our audience that we serve, but definitely for self. I know that there's some things that we're going to be doing together. And I'm excited to see what that looks like. I know we're kind of coming to a close, but is there any other big high level things or things that you would also like to put out there for our viewers?
I mean, I just really want to highlight, just get started. Right now, 2025 is the year of podcasting. If you don't have a podcast, start one. If you don't want to do it ongoing, then start your limited series. It's 6 episodes, plan them out, pre-record them, put them out there in the world, and you don't have to spend a ton of money on it. You don't have to have a ton of tech. Just do it because it is the way to move your business forward. And I really think that if you're not doing it, you're missing a big opportunity right now.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
you tell them a little bit about your SoTrue Digital freebie that you have on your website? What can they learn from that?
Yeah, so that really goes deeper into the why that you might want to have a bingeable series and what the reason that I even named it Gilmore Girls Effect. So it kind of goes really deep into that. And, the fact that it feels like home, it's a small town, it's quaint, it's quirky dialogue that makes people want to come back over and over and over again, right? Those kinds of things. It explains all of that. But then it also has in there how to sort of structure those episodes, like what should be episode 1, what kind of topic, and then episode 2, and et cetera. So it kind of like breaks that down. So if you are planning to do this as sort of you're dipping your toe into podcasting and you want to start here, grab that download because it'll at least lay that out for you and help you understand what this should look like and why you would be creating it. And I think that'll jog your memory on the topics that you might want to bring up or how you might want to present this to your audience. So I think it's a really great place to start.
And again, you can download that for those that are just listening on audio at SoTrueDigital.com. That's available to them, and obviously the best way that they can contact you directly as well. You're all over social media, but this gives them an opportunity to make that connection. So I definitely appreciate that. Starr, do you have any other closing remarks as well?
Yeah, definitely download that. I like that you include what they should include in their episodes. That is a valuable freebie. We hear so many of our audience members who are frustrated with the Facebook algorithm. TikTok might be going away. Everyone's uncertain about what they should be focusing on. Should they jump to LinkedIn? So I think this is an incredible, amazing thing that you've brought to us, which is like the secret sauce for 2025. Start your limited series Bingeable podcast. I love this strategy. Thank you so much, Amy.
Yeah, thank you,
Amy.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for being on the show today. And again, follow, like, and share us all across social media at /Uncensored Entrepreneurs. We look forward to not only just, watching some of the stuff that we've done live, but for those that are going to, looking forward to this next evolution where we're going to be on many different platforms for podcasting. And we're going to be working with Amy to do some things to see really how we can take our own personal brand, but more importantly, to be able to serve our audience in a bigger way.
Yeah.
So we thank you. We appreciate it. Amy, thanks once again for your time, and look forward to some future conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.